We were just talking about what it means to us to lead an epic life, and I put this song on because that's what it means to me. Oh.
I have to remember where the buttons are.
Oh shit, I got the words wrong. Okay, wait, are we broadcasting?
Yeah, it's on Facebook.
Hello, people!
Okay.
Welcome!
Useful things.
I'm going to turn this down.
Why are we yelling? Why are we yelling?
Loud noises!
All right.
The final countdown!
Coralie is here.
Yay!
Just here.
Coralie and Sarah, that's fabulous. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. I hope you brought questions. Oh yeah, you psyched me out. The Venus line is the second verse.
I know.
That's why I got it screwed.
I
blame you.
To Venus, Venus. And then I don't know what happens after that.
I know. Nobody knows. It's all just the final countdown.
My recent experience of that song was doing sound for a circus, and one of the clowns used this song with a hula hoop and other props. It was
That's pretty fantastic.
yeah, fairly delightful.
Well, let me just say again, hello to anyone and everyone who is watching and or hearing me right now. My name's Nicholas Rave. This is my partner in crime, Adrianne Gunn. And this is How to NLP Standing Up, our weekly experiment where we answer your burning NLP and hypnosis questions, as well as anything else that you might throw our way. So if you're here right now watching us live on Facebook or on Zoom, which is the webinar platform we're using to do this, awesome, thanks. Please say hi, send us some questions. If you're watching a replay of this or you're watching it later on, thanks. Stick around. Hopefully there'll be some cool stuff. Mostly it's just going to be us being weirdos because that's pretty much all we can do.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, I see eyeballs though.
Weird is inside of our bodies, and we are our bodies.
Yeah.
So that's what comes out when you squeeze us or put us under pressure.
That's what comes out when you squeeze us.
Wayne Dyer, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. What comes out when you squeeze an orange? Orange juice. Why? Because that's what's inside.
What comes out when
if you squeeze Adrianne, weirdness comes out.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm almost done with the sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, in case you're watching this and wondering like what's happening and why we're listening to music and not answering questions yet, we're in the process of sharing to like 4 different pages on Facebook. So there's this little preamble portion that we have to like get things going and then get things going. So if you're here right now, this is the introduction. It's like the opening credits sequence.
Right.
To the movie, right?
Only none of us have trombones, so it's not as good.
Yeah.
As it could be.
Yeah.
If we had trombones.
Makes me think of the opening credit sequence to Deadpool, which is like one of my favorite credit sequences ever, where it's going through and it's just like a handsome guy and like some other idiots. And then when the writers pop up, it's like the real talent, and it was hilarious.
Nice. Oh, harmonica.
I have a harmonica somewhere.
I have a harmonica story.
You do?
Sarah, if you wanna hear it. I was dating someone, I was in a relationship with someone who smoked a lot, and I didn't realize how annoying that would be, because generally like they need to smoke before we go into the restaurant and then after we went out. I like just going in a place and coming out of a place, or like going to sleep and then like, but they were always smoking and then showers.
Yeah.
And when
like before you do something, you got to smoke. After you do something, you got to smoke. Yeah.
So I said, this is really freaking irritating. What would you do if I took up the harmonica? I'm like, oh no, I can't go straight to bed and have sex with you right now. I have to play the harmonica. Can't cuddle, have to play the harmonica. before you go into a shopping mall, I gotta play my harmonica. So because I figured that would be dreadfully irritating.
I think there are people like that. It might not be the harmonica specifically, but it's like a,
Speaking of harmonica and smoking.
Ooh, wow. I've bowed down to your transition powers. Holy shit.
For some people, smoking is useful. And for some people, the harmonica isn't insanely irritating. With all of its like crispy sounds and breathy-esque-ness. Because in their model of the world, those are delightful things. And we wanted to talk today on how to NLP Standing Up about they're called Presuppositions of NLP. It's a fancy, it's not a clever title, but it's a fancy way of saying, here's some useful beliefs and rules that make life kind of pleasant. And one of them is having respect for someone's model of the world.
Have you ever smoked?
Me?
Yeah.
I smoked cloves for 2 weeks.
Cloves.
And then I think I smoked a cigarette, maybe 2 at some point in life.
So when it comes to respecting other people's models of the world, the place I always like to start is just an acknowledgement that everyone has a model of the world that is different and separate from the world. And I mean, this shows up in so many different ways in our lives. I was just watching a video recently of this like mystic guru shaman dude. I mean, like orange robe, big beard, beads, like turban, all of it. And he said this, he just so eloquently. He's up in front of a room. I saw this on Facebook, so some of you may have already seen this. But I was just like, yeah, man. He's up in front of the room, and he says, where am I? Point right now. And then people point. And he goes, wrong. And he says, no, where do you see me? Where do you see me? He said, like, I'm a mystic. I think about things differently. Where do you see me? And everybody points, and he's like, no. You see me right now in your mind. You have never seen anything outside of your mind. Everything you've experienced in the entire world has happened to you in here. And we build up. I mean, one way that you can describe models of the world is this idea that your beliefs about the world do not describe the world, they create it. That as you go out into the world with certain beliefs about the way things are, your brain is designed to prove those things correct.
Ooh, yeah.
But have you ever believed anything that you don't believe now? How much of what you believed was absolutely true, and you knew it 10 years ago, do you believe now is not only wrong, but possibly the complete opposite of the way that you thought?
When I was little, I went out in the sun more. So I was super, super brown. And I was convinced that flies thought I was poop. And so I kept yelling at flies to get away from me and that I wasn't poop. And I haven't done fly studies. I'm going to admit that right now, because you got to cite your sources. But I'm fairly certain that flies weren't attracted to me because they thought I was poop. But I can't prove it. I would need to do more research. I just don't happen to believe that I'm poop now, or that they think I'm poop. It was mostly that I thought they thought I was poop.
But the fascinating thing about that example is that every time you saw a fly, it validated your worldview.
Yeah.
right? And if you ever saw a fly on someone else who was darker, it would validate your point of view.
Absolutely.
But what's fascinating is that we can, and again, this is because our brains are not really designed for the world that we live in nowadays. Our brains work really well, like on the plains. Like, you know, there's a rustling in the bushes over there, and the part of our brain that the early humans that heard that rustling and were like, I'm curious, I want to go over and check out what that is. If it was a tiger, those people didn't pass on their genes.
Right.
So we have these biases. That's really what beliefs are. That if you were, when you were little, to see a fly on someone who didn't match what you thought flies were attracted to, your brain will just delete it. It will find reasons why that doesn't count. So you are talking about your own model of the world. I mean, it's a beautiful example.
It sort of traps you into a funny conundrum of not calling me brown in front of people.
I said darker, didn't I?
I just
darker.
recognized. I'm like, dude.
What I didn't want to say was poop colored. Oh wait.
Because that would.
Shit.
That would be super
I should have just said it.
I would just hurt so deeply. Oh my God. I had friends over that I grew up with. I have friends that we've known each other since we were about 8. We've been friends that long, and we were over, and there was this hilarious story. There's a funny thing about knowing these fun things that when you believe that they're true, they're useful. So, you know, having respect for somebody else's model of the world, you can like get that people are different and they think differently and they have different perceptions of what's going on. Like on the surface, you can get that, but then when you actually get it, these are strange moments. You're like, oh my God, different people communicate differently and they have different experiences. What? So one of my friends is my favorite story. I think I was like 28 when she was telling me a story of there was a birthday party where the person they were celebrating was loving meditation. So he wanted everybody to meditate with him for his birthday. So they sat down for, I don't know if it was like 20 minutes or so. And he just said, here's how meditation works. Because not everyone knew. He's like, we're going to sit quietly. And I want you to focus on your breathing, just your inhale and your exhale. And if you have thoughts, notice them and let them go. And then everyone meditated, right? And then they wrapped up and everyone was like, oh God, geez, that was hard. And my friend is looking around at everybody and she's like, what are you talking about? Like, you just like focus on your inhale, focus on your exhale. And if a thought comes, you like notice it and let it go. And so she sat there the entire time with no thoughts in her head. And as she's telling me this story, I'm 28 and I'm like, I'm sorry. And I've known her for 20 years at this point. And I was like, you didn't have thoughts in your head? And she's like, no, because he said, you know, we were supposed to sit there and just focus on our breathing. And I was like, so the inside of your head was just empty? And she's like, yeah. And she hadn't realized that not everyone experienced life that way, that everyone, like the people in the room, their heads were full of thoughts and lists and ideas. And she's like, I don't have things in my head until somebody asks me for something. And then I think of stuff. And then I come up with a plan and I do it. And then my head is empty.
And the idea that some people actually live that way is so impossible in some people's minds. So one of the things I think about when it comes to respecting other people's models of the world is we typically, when we get this, so you guys are here, like you're here watching this, listening to me, and you popped in here probably knowing something about NLP. Maybe you've heard of this idea that other people have different models of the world, and that if you don't respect someone's model of the world, if you come in and tell them that their model of the world is wrong, they're involuntarily going to push back. Mm-hmm. So it's only by respecting their model of the world, entering into their model of the world. By the way, respect does not mean accept. It just means you respect it. You acknowledge that they have a different model of the world.
Yeah.
We all tend, when we get this, I see that people usually have a set of beliefs, a percentage of their beliefs that they are able to put into that category of this is just my model of the world.
Right.
But there's another category of beliefs about the world that is either a small or large percentage, depending on who you are, where you are unable to question those ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like an example of this is two people get into a relationship. And one person says, I have a personal preference about the way that I prefer the towels to be folded in the bathroom.
Right.
And it's just my weird idiosyncrasy. Would you mind? Typically, if somebody asks you something like that, for me, I'm going to be like, yeah, of course. I'd be happy to do that for you.
Right.
But then there are those things in a relationship where one person does something and the other person looks at what they did and they react to it.
Wet towels on the bed? What? What?
And in their mind, they don't see that as a personal preference. They see that as, come on, everyone knows that you don't put wet towels on the bed. But not everyone knows that. It is genuinely and truly possible for people to have a different model of the world on every single thing you think you hold sacred. The things that you look around in the world and you go, well, everybody knows that. That doesn't mean it's not still just a personal preference. It doesn't mean it's not still just a thing that somebody unconsciously decided to believe at some point. Now, I can go into some controversial areas on this. You want to give me permission? Then I'll blame you if people get mad.
That sounds like a decent plan.
All right.
Blame me.
Let's talk about religion.
That we'll just ease in. Just start light. Go for it.
So there is a tendency that we all have to take our worldview and apply it onto other people's behavior. And we look at what they do and we say, unconsciously, if I was doing that, I would be doing it for these reasons. So one of my favorite authors, a guy named Sam Harris, gets a lot of flack for this, but his PhD was done on the neurobiology of belief. In other words, what brain state does a person get into when they believe something is true versus something is not true? And what they found is that people who have religious beliefs believe those things in exactly the same way neurologically as you and I believe things like the sun is going to come up tomorrow, or breathing is good, or the ground is going to hold me up if I put my foot on it. Like that, those are beliefs that are just unquestionable. They're so unquestionable, we don't even think of them as beliefs. Now, I'm bringing up this idea of religion because whether you're religious or not, I'm pretty sure you understand that there are people out there who hold beliefs that are different than yours. People who believe different religious beliefs. One of the things that I find so fascinating, and this is something Sam Harris has talked about a lot, is that many people, terrorists, for instance, will flat out say exactly why they're doing what they're doing. And people in the West will not believe them. They will say, I am blowing these people up because I believe that if I murder these children, ooh, this got dark. If I murder these children, I'm saving them. If I blow myself up and I blow them up with me, we will instantly wake up. And because I killed them as children, they will wake up in heaven and they won't go to hell. But if I keep letting these people learn these other ideas, if I keep allowing these people to be indoctrinated, eventually they'll reach a point where even if I killed them, they would still go to hell.
Right.
And that is a convicted belief that these people have, that they absolutely believe that if I blow myself up, I'm going to show up in the afterlife with 72 virgins.
72.
And yet, what's that?
That you sweetly talk to and give chocolates to.
Yeah, exactly. And yet so many of us look at that and we unconsciously go, they don't really believe that. Like, because I don't.
Right.
Because unconsciously, I don't believe that. So that's not really why they're doing it. They're doing it for socioeconomic reasons. They're doing it for these other things because that's why you would be doing it. Right. I like using extreme examples to illustrate points.
Yeah, I see the Facebook feed filled daily with people who won't, like, people are always showing you who they are and what they believe.
Yeah.
And people are just like, no.
Yeah.
It's not who you are, but just believe them.
Yeah.
They're telling you with everything they do and say what they're about.
Yep.
Like you can't mask it or hide it.
Yes.
But there's
oh
always
my God.
you can tell.
That to me is the beginning of respecting other people's models of the world, is just believing people. Believing that when somebody says, this is what I think, this is why I'm doing it. Like, how many people are in relationships where their partner says, I love you, and in their head they go, nah.
Yeah.
They don't hear it. They don't believe it.
No.
And a lot of times that's because the person who doesn't believe it may be disconnected from their own feelings. So when they say, I love you, they are not actually feeling the feeling of love in their body.
Right.
So they assume that the other person who says, oh my God, I love you so much, they assume that when they say that, they're just speaking words because that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Hey, there's a favorite story that you've told, I think about Bandler. Like, okay, so we can talk about, first of all, the power of just realizing that other people have a different model of the world.
Yes.
Is huge.
And that they are literally living in a different universe than you. That their experience of reality is molded and shaped at a level that is so much deeper than you and most people can possibly understand. That their model of the world means that, you know, metaphorically, maybe literally, the color red is not the color red to them and to you. Like, it can be that dramatic.
Yeah. So when you get that, you can be truly helpful to people. And there's this fun story with Bandler. There are two really great stories with Bandler getting into other people's models of the world.
I like the one about the tall, skinny guy, right?
Tall, skinny guy.
I don't want to do the Jesus story. I've told that one too many times.
Yeah, do the tall, skinny guy. That one's my favorite.
Will you look through some of the comments that we've got?
Yeah, I keep getting booped, but I don't see the thingies.
Yeah, I want to see. Like, I see eyeballs on Facebook Live. So hello to those of you on Facebook Live. I cannot see who you are. I wish that I could say your name and be like, shout out to my homies, whoever you are. I can't, though. So I'm going to just tell this story. So there's this story. One of the co-founders of NLP was brought in to work with this young man, late teens, early 20s. And his presenting problem was that he believed that he was ugly and he was stupid. And deep down, underneath everything in his life, he just walked around with this belief that I'm ugly and I'm stupid. And that was like, why everything, why he couldn't be successful, why he couldn't have a relationship, why he couldn't do this, why he couldn't do that, because I'm ugly and I'm stupid. And he had worked with a bunch of different people who had tried to help him. And they'd tried to do things like say, here, look in this mirror, look at yourself and say, I am a smart, handsome man. And he would look in the mirror and he would go, I am a smart, handsome man. And then he would no, with feeling, I am a smart, handsome man. And in his mind, it's just because the more you push against it, what happens? They push back. So Bandler, they finally sent him to go see Richard Bandler. And as I heard the story, he asked not to be told what the problem was. So he sat down and he says, so what's the problem? And the guy says, well, I think I'm ugly and I'm stupid. And Bandler says, and he says, no, that's the problem. The problem is I think I'm ugly and I'm stupid. And he goes, so? He says, no, you're not understanding me. The problem is that I think I'm ugly and I think I'm stupid. And Bandler says, first of all, you're one of the ugliest people I've ever seen in my life. Second of all, you're clearly stupid because you have said this to me and I've responded 3 times now. So my question to you is this: you're ugly and you're stupid. What are we going to do about that? And for the first time, he entered so deeply into his model of the world and then opened the door of possible change a crack. Just a crack is all it needs. Now, is he going to leave him with those beliefs? You're ugly and you're stupid. Is that the end of the conversation? Obviously not. That's not the point. But you can't get in the door without first acknowledging where they're at. And oh my God, this is not just a therapeutic principle. I run into this still in my relationship with my wife. I will end up in situations where the more heated the topic, the more emotionally charged it is on my side, the less sensory acuity that I have, and the more frequently I dive right in to sharing my intuitions, sharing the other side of the perspective. She has her model of the world, and I go, okay, she's got that one. Let me share how she's wrong. let me reframe it. NLP is an amazing set of tools for relationships, and it can also be one that you have to learn how to use effectively. You have to step your skills up.
Oh, I've got this one. Since I'm a communication expert, I obviously know.
Oh my God.
From this triggered place of high emotions.
Yes.
Why my perspective is the more useful one.
So the key,
I studied a lot.
Yeah, the key, and my wife thankfully has the level of maturity and self-awareness to understand this. The key is not that my intuitions are wrong. As a matter of fact, she frequently says, no, your intuitions are valid and valuable and helpful. And sometimes when it's emotionally charged, I need you to acknowledge my model of the world first. Get into rapport. Acknowledge that model of the world first. Only by entering into another person's model of the world first do you earn the right to potentially lead them to a new way of thinking.
Right. This one goes really well with, I think we've talked about this concept. It may be one of the presuppositions. I have many versions of the books with lists, but does it lead pretty well into everyone's doing the best they can with the resources they have?
Yeah, I mean, I go weird places with this.
Yeah.
So there is a presupposition of NLP, which is everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they have available. And the first thing I always like to point out is who is included in everyone. Everyone. And that includes you, and it includes me. So I often ask people, have you ever done something And as soon as you did it, you immediately went, oh, why did I do that?
Yes.
All of us.
Oh,
Everyone has.
Many, couple of few thousand times.
Here's what I'm telling you. You couldn't have done any better. How do I know? Because if you could have, you would have.
Oh.
Now, I used to say that this is not necessarily true, and I still stand by that. The idea that no belief is universally true, but that beliefs are useful. Some beliefs are more useful than others. And that if I had to recommend something, my recommendation would be don't believe anything. Don't believe anything too strongly. Always hold your beliefs loosely and be ready to replace them or move them, because all beliefs are contextually valuable, only in a certain situation. And what I'm going to say is that it seems to me that science has started catching up with this concept and proving it to be more true than I ever thought possible.
Okay.
And it all comes down to me to the concept of free will.
Ooh. Free will's important to people. It's like free speech, free will, something about guns. Those are the top three that people like a lot. I've been paying attention. I totally read. I don't read the news.
So free will is one of these things that people have beliefs about, but they often aren't aware of them because they don't think about it too much. There's a great book on this topic. It's very short. It's called Free Will. And it's written by the guy I mentioned earlier, Sam Harris. There's a lot of other people who have differing opinions, but from my perspective, I tend to agree with his view more than any of the other views that I've run into, because he has a deep understanding of human consciousness. He's a meditator. He's someone who has explored the inner recesses of his own mind and come to the experiential understanding of many of the things that Buddhists talk about. And I'm going to spoil the book for you. The book is called Free Will, and I like to say, spoiler, you don't have any. We all tend to think that we have this capacity to make choices. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can define free will, and you can slice it in different ways, but ultimately what it comes down to from like a philosophical perspective is, if you're faced with a choice between A and B and you choose A, free will means, in our mind, if you have free will, it means you could have chosen B.
Right.
And
I probably should have been more shocked when you said that we don't have free will. For the like, I've heard this concept before. So you're telling me that the choice A and B are not necessarily equivalent for someone?
Basically, more and more scientific experiments are showing up to show us that your brain, the higher functioning of your brain, the neocortex, the part of your brain that is most responsible for you being different than the rest of the animal kingdom, it is not about free will. Its job is about coming up with rationalizations for why you did the thing you did after you did it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, and it rewards you. Chemically rewards you for any story, too.
Yep. So they can actually, in certain experiments, they can show, they do these experiments where they will, you have a choice between A and B, and there's like a light, and and you're looking at a clock that's like running, and then you decide to push one of the buttons, but you notice on the clock what time it was when you became aware that you had made the decision. Okay, so it's like 3.4 seconds after the timer started, I decided I was going to push the red button. But if they hook you up to an fMRI or different brain scanning technologies, they can know somewhere between a little bit less than a second and up to 7 full freaking seconds before you knew which one you were going to choose. They knew which one you were going to choose. In other words, your brain inside, your unconscious, your body, if you will, made the decision a long time before you made the decision. So everyone's doing the best they can with the resources they have available. This, to me, is one of the most amazing presuppositions, because from my perspective, this free will thing is counterintuitively the doorway to infinite compassion for everyone and yourself.
I'm gonna ask a weird question. Why would infinite compassion for everyone and yourself be useful? Just in case it sounded like too much work, or say not worth it, or impossible.
Speaking of differing models of the world, when you ask that, I'm like, why would you need to ask that? Like, obviously, compassion is, but no, you're right. Like, let's talk about it.
I can have compassion for some people, but like you're saying, everyone having compassion, and myself, both of them are important?
Yeah. Well, it basically works like this. If you don't have compassion, what do you have?
Hemorrhoids. You saw that coming, right? Everyone saw that one coming.
Yeah.
We were all thinking it.
All right. If you don't have compassion, what do you have besides hemorrhoids?
You may have a lot of money.
Okay, so I'm thinking about a person, and I'm thinking about that person, and I don't have compassion. What do I have in my body instead of compassion?
Distrust, anger.
Perfect.
Tension.
Yes. So you could keep going with a bunch of words and labels. Mm-hmm. I'm going to abstract on them and say negative emotions.
Cool.
You could say hate, anger, fear, judgment. I think judgment is probably the best word.
Yeah.
But like tension, all these words that are labels for an emotional experience. Basically, to put it bluntly, your brain works better when you don't have those things. In martial arts, you guys, it's a cliche. You've all heard this before, that if you can make your opponent angry, you've already won the match. They've already lost, because the moment that they become angry to the point where they are emotionally flooded, they're no longer accessing the creative capacity of your mind. So why compassion? Compassion is a 100% selfish act.
Ooh. Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah. If you want to be the best version of you, the most creative, the most persuasive, the most influential, the most successful, and more importantly, I think the happiest, most fulfilled, most satisfied, most on purpose version of you is not going to be the version of you that is harboring anger, resentment, hate. They are the dark side. Yeah.
So you're saying that in order to be like happy and fulfilled and get the stuff I want, I have to care about other people. because it's good for me.
It's simpler than that.
Okay.
So some of you understand there's another NLP presupposition, the law of requisite variety. Whoever has the most behavioral flexibility controls the system or is in charge.
Right.
So if someone else can do something and make you angry, you're not in control.
Truth.
If you're faced with a situation and the only response that you're capable of is anger, you lack flexibility. So compassion is, to me, a tool to gain flexibility. There's a great book about meditation called 10% Happier, and it's about this secular atheist journalist who had a panic attack on national television and went, something's wrong here. I need to find a solution. And he found that solution in studying meditation. But he was always questioning a lot of the kind of woo-woo aspects of meditation. And, he ended up talking to people like Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle and these types of people and getting what I would call eye-rollingly stupid answers from them to the questions that he asked. And then finally, he got a chance to sit down with the Dalai Lama. Like, for instance, he asked Deepak Chopra, "Do you ever get angry?" And Deepak said, "No, never. Never anymore. Never. I don't get angry ever anymore." And he sat down with the Dalai Lama and he said, "Do you still get angry?" And he smiled and laughed and said, "Of course." He said, "Anyone who says they don't get angry, maybe not from Earth." So at this point, this guy named Dan, the author of 10% Happier, he goes, "Oh my God, finally." I'm talking to somebody who's being real with me. And he's like, "Okay, but I have noticed a difference. I've been meditating for a couple of years and I've found these things." And he said, I've been practicing mindfulness meditation. And then he got into this type of meditation that's called metta meditation, METTA. And it's one of the more widely practiced Buddhist meditations, and it's often called compassion meditation. And that's because it works like this. The metta meditation is 4 or 5 steps, I can't remember, but it basically works like this. You practice mindfulness. Generally comes first. People practice mindfulness, which is the ability to focus on one single thing, like your breath or a candle or a mantra or something like that, because you're exercising the muscle of attention. Mm-hmm. That's what mindfulness meditation is about, generally. And after you have practiced this and you've gotten to the point where you can concentrate, where you can focus on one thing, then you start to use that tool. And one of the practices that they have you do is you begin to cultivate the feeling of compassion in your body. Now, from an NLP perspective, this is a real thing. This is a kinesthetic experience. It's a real feeling that is generated in your body, and you are either feeling it or not, and you're the only one who can know whether you are or you aren't. You can't fake this. It doesn't work if you're faking it. It works if you're like, "I feel compassion." Have you ever felt compassion for another human being? Think back to a time when you felt it. Go back to that time, see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel the feeling of compassion in your body. That's how you start to generate it. Mm-hmm. So then what you do in the metta meditation process is you feel compassion, and you bring to mind a loved one into your mind, and you feel the feeling of compassion, and you think about that loved one at the same time. And you start with this one because it's the easiest. Then, after you do that, you do the same thing. You bring up compassion, you feel compassion in your body, and then you bring to mind a stranger. You think of a stranger, someone you don't know, and you feel compassion in your body and you think about them. Like a lot of people hear compassion meditation and they think I'm supposed to feel compassion for that person. But it's simpler than that. It's feel compassion and think about that person. That's it. Just hold the two things in your body and your mind at the same time. And you do it with a stranger, which is slightly more difficult. Then, and I think I'm getting the order right here, then you think about an enemy or a person who you have trouble feeling compassion for. I don't know who that person might be. It might be one of your someone you know, someone who wronged you. Might be an ex. Might be a family member. It might be the President of the United States. Whoever it is that challenges you most, bring up the feeling of compassion and bring that person into your mind. And then the fourth step is you do the same thing. I think I'm getting this right. You do the same thing but with yourself. So you feel the feeling of compassion, you think of yourself, and then you do a body scanning process, and that's the 5 steps of the meta meditation. So Dan, the guy who wrote 10% Happier, he sits down with the Dalai Lama and he goes, look, I get this compassion thing. I think there's something here, but are you actually telling me that if I sit here and I meditate and I think about my loved one, that my compassion is somehow going to like magically travel through the ether and change their life somehow? Or is it going to make a difference to my enemy to think about, to feel compassion and think about my enemy in some way? And the Dalai Lama said, no, that's not what you're doing. He said, compassion meditation is a selfish process. You do it for yourself. Mm-hmm. You do it because by generating the feeling of compassion in your body and bringing to mind someone who challenges you and holding them at the same time, you are literally rewiring your brain. You're doing an NLP technique. You're doing a collapse anchor, but in one of the most profound ways and in one of the most profound places in your unconscious that you could do it. It isn't about the other person. It's about increasing your flexibility. It's about getting to the point where people can't push your buttons because you don't have any buttons anymore, which is actually something we're going to be talking about tonight in our webinar about narcissism.
That is true. You also reminded me of something we've talked about in a previous episode when we were talking about hypnosis. And when you can get into somebody's model of the world, when you can hold compassion in your body and have them in mind, you have the opportunity to potentially shift their reality if you are in rapport with them and you're feeling it first.
So you're basically saying with hypnosis, with rapport, you can guide people into certain experiences without saying anything.
Absolutely.
By being able to go into those places yourself.
And you must, right?
Yeah.
In order for hypnosis to work, you need to be in that state first.
Yeah.
Although, some people are really great at going into hypnosis, whether you're in the state or not.
It's a different kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's not the partner dance that truly great hypnosis is, where it's something that goes back and forth between two people, where there's leading and following. And
so I'm gonna say I have had boops and dings and things going on today, which has indicated to me that people are saying stuff and I see them. For instance, one of your friends compassionately shared with you a message with a John Denver song. You're welcome. And then Ted's been saying some stuff online. My buddy Tony was there. And when we've shared our video to 4 different places, there seems not to be a really easy and effective non-boopy way for me to pay attention to people's comments as they come in. So we're going to have to figure that out at some point.
Does it just mean that we need to be sharing it in one place and only one place?
I don't know.
I mean, here's what I'm noticing. We have 4 people. This is the most number of people that we've had watching. We have, I'm seeing at least 4 people on Facebook. There may be more on the other pages.
Right.
And I'm seeing 4 people in the Zoom. So we may have 8 or more viewers at this point, which is more than we've had before. So let me just ask, I'm going to put this out. For those of you who are here right now, watching, listening, for those of you watching the replay, if there is anybody who does that, I think there were last week or the few other weeks, we were doing an experiment with this whole how to NLP standing up. The idea was that we wanted to experiment with a weekly show where we're answering your burning hypnosis and NLP related questions. And we decided to do 4 of them. And this is our 4th one. And that means we're trying to make a decision about whether or not we're going to come back next week and do this again. Is this something that y'all find valuable, interesting, that you would like to have more of? Is it something that you feel like you would come up with questions and you'd like to be able to have this as a resource? Because if not, I have other things I could be doing. But I love this. I mean, I would just get on here and hang out with Adrianne and talk about whatever because it's awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's people who are staying here this whole time. So I do sort of feel like there's an implication in that they're getting something out of it.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a couple people are chiming in that they appreciate it.
Yeah. Did you check the Zoom comments? Because I remember seeing a few questions in there that we might be able to rapid fire before we finish.
We answered one of them. So earlier, how does NLP accommodate this when working with clients? The presupposition of other people's model of the world. And I think we talked a bit about that and shared some stories.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about who is the Buddha that makes the grass green? Who is the Buddha that makes the poop brown? That happened.
Neat.
That happened. Ooh, okay. Here's fun. How do you handle panic attacks / anxiety? How do you set pleasure anchors? Anchors.
Pleasure ankles. That's how you deal with anxiety attacks. Pleasure ankles.
Pleasure ankle. That's
probably true.
That's a trademark technique of my own.
Yeah. Okay. Morgan says, how do you handle panic attack / anxiety? How do you set pleasure anchors? Topics for other webinars.
Actually, I do. If you want to check in, I do have someone. We're going to cover panic attacks and anxiety. That was one of the ones we were going to do specifically.
In one of our other webinars, or?
Yeah.
You mean in one of these, or in a different thing?
Yeah. If we wanted to, I was reaching out and I wanted to bring that up as a topic.
Oh, is that the volunteer that you had?
I believe so.
Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, let me answer briefly. Panic attacks. There's 2 things. You can look at the trigger, and you can disconnect the trigger from the panic attacks. You can also deal with it. Like I view all of these types of emotional responses, you can come at them from the top or the bottom. You can come up from the bottom to the top. You can come down from the top to the bottom. And if you really want to get the best results, you should do both at the same time. So from the top to the bottom is what I call working on the imaginary level, or working on the mental, emotional side of it. So from a certain perspective, if someone is experiencing anxiety, it is because at some level they are envisioning a future going badly. 100% of the time, we don't have anxiety about going things the way, the best that we could possibly imagine. We don't feel anxious about that. If someone's feeling anxious, but this gets to that point that I was talking about with your neocortex is sometimes referred to as the lying storyteller. NLP frequently comes at the problem from saying, let's change the way they're viewing this thing, and that will have a trickle-down effect on the emotional response cycle. And that does work some of the time, but a lot of the time, the emotion is there first. And the projection is happening afterwards.
Right.
Like I use this example. If you've ever spent time around a 2-year-old, you probably understand that if the 2-year-old is sitting there and they're playing with a toy, like one of those boxes with like, you know, the holes and the different shaped things that go in the boxes, and they're like trying to fit the square shape in the round hole, and they get frustrated and they throw a fit, they like scream and cry, and what typically most parents, babysitters, anybody who's spent time around a 2-year-old is not going to assume first that the problem is the toy that they're playing with. Why is the baby freaking out? Why is the toddler freaking out? Are they hungry? Is their diaper need to be changed? Do they need a nap? And if you were to be able to communicate with the child and say, oh, are you cranky? It's time for a nap, isn't it? The child would go, no, no, the problem is that fucking toy. This stupid toy is what's making me angry right now. That's the problem. But we understand that the 2-year-old probably just needs a nap. The 2-year-old's just cranky because there's cranky in their body. And by the way, if it wasn't that toy, it would be something else that would be making them cranky, because the cranky is inside and they're just looking for something outside to point at, to blame it on. That's what the brain does. The brain goes, I'm feeling anxious. Why am I feeling anxious? That's why. That thing over there, that's why. Oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious about that. What if you were just feeling anxious? What if there was just anxiety in your body and all of the justifications and reasons are just the machinations of your irrational mind trying to rationalize an irrational experience? So this is why for many people, you can't solve it this way. You got to solve it this way, which means you got to get the anxiety out of their body. Mm-hmm. And that relates to trauma. That relates to unresolved emotional trauma that has built up over time. And that can very simply be described as tension. There is muscular tension in the body that the person has probably become numb to. They don't even know that tension is in the body. They can't feel it. But the anxiety is still overwhelming them. And it needs to get out. And there are lots of tools and techniques that you can use for that. I highly recommend looking into something called bioenergetics, or come and check out the webinar that we're doing tonight or any of the webinars upcoming, because we're going to be talking a lot about bioenergetics. We're going to be talking a lot about somatic psychology and trauma in the body and how to get rid of it, how to let it out.
Yeah, trauma shows up in a lot of different ways. For some people, depression, anxiety, and sometimes narcissism, which is the topic of our webinar this evening. So if you are all available and want to join us, 5:30 Pacific?
Yes, ma'am.
How to deal with a narcissist. People will be there.
Fantastic.
So this has been the two of us, Adrianne Gunn and
Nicholas Rave.
And we've been NLPing Standing Up with you.
All over the floor.
All this entire time.
Literally for me. No, I mean the standing up part, not the...
Yeah. I may get a stand-up desk.
I don't know. Maybe I should sit. Maybe we'd be in better rapport.
Could be the case. I think we've done it.
I think we did. Okay. Let's end now before it just kind of peters out. So much love to you all. Merry Christmas, and to all a good night. I don't know.
Yes.
Have an awesome week. And Cora Lee says, please really consider continuing. So I will, absolutely. especially because you asked, Coralie.
Aw,
So
much love.
love you all. Have a great week. Please contact us with questions in some capacity. Message us on Facebook, make a post on one of our pages, email me, whatever. If you have questions, especially if they're like pertinent to your life and stuff, related to hypnosis, NLP, whatever, let us know, because this is a much more enjoyable experience when we're answering your questions instead of just coming up with different topics to talk about.
Absolutely. Thanks
All
for
right.
Have a good night.
That's it. We are done. Peace.